I touched on US politics earlier, the viciousness of debates about race issues, law and order, the pandemic, and now the West Coast bushfires there. Quite extraordinary. So it was great to chat to the great Mark Steyn earlier today, and I started by asking him about the latest clash between Trump derangement syndrome and reality. Because 3 years back, when Donald Trump recognised Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, all the usual political and media opponents and other world leaders said it would lead to more conflict and undercut any peace initiatives. Yet what did we see yesterday? Donald Trump overseeing the establishment of peace deals between Israel and two Arab states, Bahrain and United Arab Emirates. It looks like Trump has confounded his critics yet again.
Yeah, they said that the Jerusalem embassy move was provocative. In fact, it didn't provoke anything except this sudden outbreak of peace among various unlikely parties. I'm not sure how much difference that actually makes on the ground in terms of November's election, but it actually does show that when you discard the conventional wisdom, if you recall when Trump was impeached, he was basically impeached because some of these striped pants diplomats with their bow ties tied up a bit too tight, the strange creatures who'd been at the State Department in Foggy Bottom for decades felt that it was somehow impertinent that the people should be able to change foreign policy by changing their elected leaders. In this case, the conventional wisdom that survived through the Obama administration was in fact incredibly bad for America and incredibly bad for the world, and ditching that conventional wisdom of the professional diplomatic class has actually been good for America and the world.
And it just also exposes Joe Biden's weakness. He says he's always supported Jerusalem as the capital, but that Trump was wrong to do it, but he won't unwind it. So he's just got to bob each way.
Yeah, and that's like everything. North American Free Trade Agreement, he was all in favour of that. He accidentally said that the new agreement, Trump scrapped that and replaced it with a new agreement. He actually says the new agreement is better. So after Trump's done it, he's on board with it. But basically, Biden is a guy who's been in Washington for a little short of half a century, and in the last year has just been staggering around woozily, discarding everything he did in the previous 47 years. So the thing about Biden is he doesn't actually accomplish anything. His experience consists of experience in not actually accomplishing anything. Yes, he might have been theoretically, ideologically in favour of Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, but would he have done anything about it? No, because you push against him, as I think Field Marshal Earl Haig said of Lord Stanley, he bears the imprint of whoever last has sat upon him. Biden has been in his basement for months, and a lot of people have sat on him, and what he says today bears no relation to anything from the last 47 years.
He's still leading in the polls, but how's he going when it comes to people's assessment of this, I suppose, his mental acuity? He's still slipping up every now and then. He referred to Iran the other day when he meant Iraq. His running mate Kamala Harris the other day talked about the Harris administration and then said that Joe Biden would have a role in it as well. Is he convincing people that he's up to the job?
Well, Kamala Harris rather gave the game away. They're not supposed to say that, but the impression she left when she said, I think the Harris administration with a special appearance by Joe Biden seemed to imply that she would be updating the Westminster model, where Joe would be allowed to be a kind of ceremonial Governor General and cut the ribbon at this or that fate every so often. And in effect, Kamala Harris would be running the show. I mean, I could well see why she might be interested in that, but I wouldn't actually recommend saying it out loud until the third week of January or so. I think you'd best keep it under wraps till then.
Indeed. Look, when it comes to those horrible bushfires on the west coast in Oregon and in California, at least 35 people dead, shocking bushfires like we had in Australia last summer, but we've had the same crazy, insane overlaying of this with climate change politics. Now, Joe Biden said the other day that if you re-elect Donald Trump, you'll get more wildfires and more flooding in the US. Are people buying this sort of craziness? Yeah. What happened to the fact checkers at the New York Times and the Washington Post?
Yeah, well, he promised that your suburbs, if you live in the suburbs, you're either going to burn, you're going to be flooded, or you're going to be swept away by hurricanes. There may have been a fourth, there may have been a plague of locusts in there somewhere, but basically all these apocalyptic scenarios are going to be afflicting American suburbs. The fact actually is that the apocalyptic scenarios are caused by liberal policies. I happen to be, in my New Hampshire capacity, a small and fitful tree farmer. And people think that, you know, a bunch of trees is just a bunch of trees. They grow up and you don't do anything. If you don't manage the forest floor and you don't clear it out, it's full of kindling. And basically it's like when a fire breaks out in the forest that you don't manage, that you don't clear. It's like being surprised if you leave kindling all over your living room floor and then you're surprised when your house burns down. Basically, liberal policies have controlled the western forests of America for the last 30 years, especially on federal land. And if you notice, if you're watching from up on planet Zongo with your binoculars, you notice that they mysteriously stop at the Mexican border and also at the Canadian border. And the choice for liberals, the choice for progressives, the choice for the left is whether you want actual virtue signalling unto death. Are you prepared to virtue signal about climate change so much that your big fancy house in California burns to the ground? Are you prepared to virtue signal about Black Lives Matter so much that you're prepared to let your business be burned down? It's basically the choice for the left is, do you want to virtue signal until the death and destruction of everything that matters to you?
Yeah, Mark, there's so much truth in that, and what we saw with Black Lives Matter in the past week was just disgusting. People chanting outside a hospital, hoping that two innocent police who were shot would die. But I wanted to finish up on the pandemic, which of course has hit the US hard, which is seen as the greatest weakness for Donald Trump. But we are starting to see around the world, at least to some degree, that perhaps locking down countries, locking down cities like Melbourne in Australia on the basis of very few deaths as a percentage of the population doesn't actually protect you. That actually, in the end, everybody's going to have to learn how to deal with this virus anyway.
Yeah, and no one's ever done it on this degree before, basically trying to quarantine, as is going on in Victoria, entire populations. They never did that during the Great Plague of London in the 17th century. In a sense, we had more freedom then. We're told now we have the freedom to vote every few years. But in Victoria, you don't have the freedom to leave your house unless it's for one of 3 approved reasons. You can maybe do that in free societies for a week or two. You can't have a fortnight to flatten the curve that is now entering its 3rd quarter. These lockdowns have been disastrous for the entire Western economy, except oddly Sweden. And obviously China hasn't been so foolish as to do anything. And I think Trump's problem is basically he hasn't managed this pandemic any worse than, you know, the Prime Minister of Belgium or the Prime Minister of Denmark. In a sense, he's caught on in a trap because his rhetoric on it has been more COVID scoffing than his actual policies. And it is hurting him with certain demographic groups. Whether that makes the difference on November the 3rd, I don't know. But in fact, as a practical matter, Europe and other parts of the world are moving closer to Trump's attitude to lockdown and things. Lockdown has basically failed, and mortgaging everything to, you know, a professional alarmist class like that idiot professor at Imperial College in London. That's not the answer.
It doesn't work.
To these kinds of situations.
Mark Steyn, you're a purveyor of fake news. There's actually 4 reasons they can use you leave the House. Thanks so much for joining us and cutting through with some uncommon common sense.
OK, thanks a lot, Chris.
He is fantastic, Mark Steyn, isn't he? If you don't think you get enough chance to read him or see him in Australia, go to his website, Steyn Online. Google Steyn Online. Now, we've talked a bit about the presidential contest today. We've just got time to squeeze in a little bit from President Donald Trump himself today. He's been focusing today, talking about over-egging things and exaggerating things. He's very bullish on a vaccine being available soon and a plan to distribute that right across the US and eventually the world.
We're on track to deliver and distribute the vaccine in a very, very safe and effective manner. We think we can start sometime in October. We'll be able to distribute at least 100 million vaccine doses by the end of 2020 and a large number much sooner than that.
If it's a good vaccine, if it works, then all power to him. But I got a feeling he's got his eye on the first week in November as the deadline to get this out and about. We'll see.